Hello, everyone. This is going to be a section on a book that I'm reading right now called The Essential Marcus Aurelius from Jacob Needlesman. And what I'm going to do is read the book aloud and then probably react to it after I finish reading everything, kind of go back through the text and reread. That's when you read Stoicism, it is very important to reread the information, I feel like. So here we go. We're gonna start with the introduction here. I do have a book, so you will be hearing me turn pages. Sorry that it is not online, but let's do it. So the introduction by Jacob Needleman. What could be clearer? No other life is more appropriate for the practice of philosophy than that which you now happen to be living. And that's Meditations 11.7. What is the secret of this remarkable book? What has enabled it now and in the past to speak to countless men and women throughout the world without evoking anything but quiet respect and gratitude? We know that the works of the great philosophers, from Plato and Aristotle to the modern giants Nietzsche, Heidegger, and Wittgenstein, all have their passionate, sometimes angry defenders and detractors. Not so this profoundly influential book. Although there are scholarly disagreements about the meaning of certain passages, hardly a trace of agitation or feverish controversy has ever found its way into the atmosphere of this text. Why is that? What enables these private, intimate meditations of the Emperor of Rome to transcend the noise of his and our embattled world? What enables his words to reach so greatly across the millennia, offering us the hope and the taste of an inner strength that is only a quiet mind can bring? Simply to summarize, the main ideas in the book can give no sense of the power it has to help people face the vastitudes that are the lot of every human life. The shocks, the terrors, the disappointments, the sorrows, as well as the overmastering triumphs and cravings that sweep us away, the betrayals that wound and confound us, and the specter of death that shadows every moment of the days and years that are given to us as we live on earth. Yes, the book offers us the great idea of the mind of the universe, calling to us from within our own mind. And yes, it speaks of the inner freedom that we experience when we step back in ourselves and try to listen to that call. The cultivation of this inner freedom, says Marcus, is both our deepest human possibility and the real root of self-respect and moral power for which we yearn. The ability to love and act justly in the conduct of our lives. Such ideas help us not to give up. They inspire and bring honorable, realistic hope in our own embattled lives. And this hope Marcus offers us with an unsurpassed blended of metaphysical vision, poetic genius, and the worldly realism of a ruler whose realm comprises nearly half the peoples of the known world. For this alone, this book deserves its unique place among the writings of the world's greatest spiritual philosophers. But this in itself does not represent the real secret of this book and its action upon us. It is not the ideas alone that reach into us with such compassionate precision, nor is it simply the subtlety and economy with which they are expressed. No. To discover the real secret of this book, you must open it when life is breaking your heart, or when you are engulfed by anxiety or self-pity or resentment, or, far more difficult, open it when all your dreams seem to be coming true and it seems that all will be forever well. What is it about the book that mercifully brings us to a stop in the form of a completely new sense of inner dignity and strength? Not the strength that promises victory over our enemies, or the promises of pleasure or money, food, sex, or even health and freedom from pain, and not the dignity of self-importance that comes from the praise of others or from the many and varied badges of honor which the world persuades us to take so seriously, and not even from our ability to withstand difficulty and hardship without flinching, although that may certainly be a great virtue in its own proper place. Again, no, the secret of this book does not lie in such things, though it is often interpreted that way. The real secret of the book lies in the fact that Marcus is writing these meditations to himself and to himself alone, not to you or me or any of the many thousands of us who over the centuries have carried this book with them. He is writing to himself. He is expressing to himself what he is trying and inwardly questioning through his own awakened attention in the present moment. Few of us, of course, can have any idea what this inner state must be like as he reflects and writes, nor of the immensity of the forces that are combining upon him and within him. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, carrying nearly the world itself on his shoulders, determining the life and death of millions, judging, ruling, killing, and rescuing. The Emperor of Rome, marooned in the swamps of Eastern Europe, with the great Roman army defending the empire against barbarian hordes, the likes of which are eventually destined to bring down the empire of 1,000 years. The Emperor of Rome, poor human being that he is, target of both adoration and murderous hatred, a man suffering and dying from an unknown illness as he sits late and alone in his tent. Under the force of such inner and outer conditions, his words reflect the uniquely human work of attending consciously to one's own mind, his own developing soul. It is this pure inner search for self-knowledge under the most harrowing of conditions that brings us such penetrating, practical intelligence to the philosophical ideas he has studied throughout his life. Charging his vision of the universe and God and the conduct of life with such a contagious, compassionate objectivity towards himself and the forces of life. The pages of this book are, in fact, a testament to the transforming effect that the awakening of a conscious attention has upon the workings of the human mind and heart. Is it this, then, this effect upon himself, not so much of the great universal ideas he turns to, but of his inner questioning as such? Is this the secret of the meditations of Marcus Aurelius? Yes, but we must look still further. I suggest that there is yet another secret in these writings, a secret within a secret. I believe we can detect something in this book that is quite rare in philosophical writing, at least in the most modern philosophical texts. It seems clear to me that as he is writing, Marcus is often intensely and carefully watching his own thoughts and impulses with a sincerity and power of attention that is much more difficult to attain than we may imagine. That, as I say, is part of the secret of this book. But the secret within the secret lies in the fact that such self-expression of the inner search at the same time awakens and guides the attention of the reader to his own thoughts and impulses. And just as, in these instances, Marcus is seeking to experience from within himself the higher attention of what he calls the logos, or universal reason, so too the sensitive reader begins to listen for that same finer life within his own psyche. That is to say, the reader, you and I, is not simply given great ideas which he then feeds into his already formed opinions and rules of logic. The action of many of these meditations is far more serious than that, and far more interesting and spiritually practical. In a word, in such cases, in many of these meditations, we are being guided without even necessarily knowing what to call it. We are being guided through a brief moment of inner work. We are being given a taste of what it means to step back in ourselves and develop an intentional relationship to our own mind. And what Marcus would have us and himself understand, and here's the great power of these writings, is that this is the source of true self-respect in human life. Marcus is telling us, and in a certain definite sense, he is showing us. Think again of the conditions under which he is writing the fall of Rome. That's what they're referring to. That no matter what befalls us, no matter what life deals us, no matter what temptations or suffering we encounter, no matter how shaken we are, or bored, or torn by impossible demands and choices, no matter what is happening to us in the life we happen to be living, it is always possible for us to step back within ourselves and rediscover an intentional relationship to our own mind, which includes our thoughts, emotions, and sensations. No one and nothing can take that possibility from us. I'm a human being. I'm not, first and foremost, a man or a woman, not an animal, not a computer, not a car, not a bank account, not a professor, senator, soldier, not even a mother or father. I'm first and foremost a human being. And it is of the essence of a human being that he has the possibility, and as Marcus will tell us, the high duty, to cultivate the capacity to step back from himself and become conscious of himself. The capacity and responsibility to remember what he is as both an individual, personally living just here and now, in this or that circumstance, and as a human being who has withheld himself, who is within oneself, a conscious particle of divinity. But there is yet more. Throughout the meditations, while Marcus is communicating his struggle not to attach himself to his emotional judgments and thought associations, he speaks of the fundamental wish to open himself to the mind of the whole, that we often translate here as reason. It is clear that he is not speaking of only a comforting, interesting, philosophical idea which may bring consolidation or may therapeutically take our mind away from troubling or agitating thoughts. He is not speaking of a mere idea or concept. He is speaking of a palpable force that has material effects on his thinking, his feeling, his action in the world. To be more precise, he is speaking of his struggle to open himself to an identity, a self within himself, that has the capacity to obey and transmit the mind of the whole into the bones and muscles of his own human body. Does he succeed in effecting this opening? Perhaps, perhaps not, in this or that case. But the reader can sense Marcus's need for that opening, and his certainty that is not only possible but necessary. Indeed, that is the most necessary work that a human being can undertake, for it is through such contract with the principle of mind within oneself that the individual is given the true capacity to live fully and vibrantly the life he has been given, and to act justly towards one's fellow man. And the reader finds himself not only thinking about the idea of the ruling principle in oneself, which directly obeys and transmits the mind of the whole, but may actually find him or herself waiting inwardly, searching inwardly for that contact, that reflection to one's own higher attention. It is in this silent inner waiting, however momentary, that the reader finds the unique power of this remarkable book. Even as its ideas place our lives in a broader cosmic perspective, one of the central roles of real philosophy, at the same time, the beginning of a profound psychological, metaphysical process occurs within us that deepens and quiets our ordinary sense of self. For a fleeting moment, we become new human beings, and not only ordinary human beings entertaining new thoughts. New thoughts, new ideas are finally not enough, and it is a new mind itself that is needed in this life. And these meditations have the power to give us a taste of that. That is their secret power. And we may conclude that this is a first real step towards awakening from the troubled sleep of our lives. And then there's a quote here at the very end. But if, when you have come to the end, your honor only your guiding part, the divine that is within you, and you do not fear ceasing to live so much as you fear never having begun to live in accordance with nature, then you will be a man who is worthy of the cosmos that created you, and you will cease to live like a stranger in your own mind. Meditations 12:1. So what I decided to do was reread the introduction from Jacob Needlesman, and I underlined some keynotes as I reread it, and I'm going to kind of share those with you, and then kind of a little bit more context maybe around each instance that I underlined. So it's kind of like a love letter in a way to Marcus, I would say, from Jacob in this text. But right away at the beginning, he talks about the modern giants of psychology as Nietzsche, Heidegger, and Wittgenstein, and then talks about how they can be passionate and angry about their views and very combative in discussing them. And that was very much kind of the context for Rome back in the day. It was a battle of ideas. You'd go to the public square and debate ideas with people, and that was how you kind of made a name for yourself in the sphere of public opinion. And then after talking about the giants and how they disagree, it comes back to the meditations, which this is going to be a shorter book. It's not the full meditations, so this is just kind of to get you guys into it. But he then talks about Marcus, how many great leaders throughout history have carried Marcus's meditations, because the meditations weren't something that Marcus was making to share with other people. It's like his closest diary that he would write about what was happening in his life.
someone published that. That's basically what meditations is. And I think that's why more people are interested in carrying it, because there are certain things that you deal with when the fall of Rome is happening and everything else that kind of goes along with that. Then you enter the Dark Ages, and it's a lot of carnage and blood in the history of humanity. But the meditations kind of breaks down the struggles that Marcus is going through and how he's trying to relate to other people, understand their opinions. And sometimes it's better to just listen instead of always waiting for your turn to speak, and really try and understand someone else. And by understanding someone else, help them either think of a new way to think about things, or maybe that has an impact on the way you think about things, and then you have to kind of readjust your scaffolding. But so many people they're caught up in it's either my way or no way of seeing life. And the diary really breaks down kind of thinking about not just yourself. The next part that I underlined was simply to summarize the main ideas in the book can give no sense of power it has to help people face the vastitudes that are the lot of every human life. And then to take it into another level of the other, he talks about everyone having a different, you have no idea what that guy on the street went through in his life. And for people to be hurt and lashing out at people, there has to be something that happened in their life that made them very unhappy to act that way. That's not the natural state of mankind. All right, I think that we'll leave that one there. The next passage starts with the cultivation of this inner freedom, says Marcus, is both our deepest human possibility and the real root of the self-respect and moral power for which we yearn. The ability to love and act justly in the conduct of our lives. And I would say that, ironically, that passage ties back into the chapter 1 Genesis that I was talking about, where like God loved the earth so much that he said, hey, here's some power, bring forth some things after what you want to make. Like that's when you can really pull out someone else's best potential. That's when you're truly living your life. And that's what God, I would argue, is doing with humanity. And the downfall of man was, it brought great suffering, but it also brought something else that is kind of beautiful because of free choice. Such ideas help us not to give up. They inspire us and bring honorable, realistic hope in our embattled lives. The placebo effect. That's what you're going for. The way you live should be a placebo effect. That's 30% better odds on every decision that you make in your life. Don't lie to yourself, but believe in yourself. If you lie to yourself, you'll start the nocebo effect, which is a downward trajectory at 30%. They're 10 to 30%, depending on the study, but variation, I would say at least 20%. But in this itself, it does not represent the real secret of this book and its action upon us. To discover the real secret of this book, you must open it when life is breaking your heart, or when you are engulfed by anxiety, or self-pity, or resentment, or, far more difficult, open it when all your dreams seem to be coming true, and it seems that all will be well forever. The struggle of mankind. And I think they pulled that out nicely from Meditations. And then it goes on to talk about not the strength that promises victory over our enemies, or that promises the pleasure of money, food, or sex, or even health and freedom from pain. So all the worldly, more primal desires kind of fall away the more you get into this oneness of thought and thinking about yourself and others and their perspectival knowing of what their life is, and loving them no matter what, but also being willing to tell them when they feel like they've gotten more into the worldly living. Not living for anything bigger than themselves, just living in the moment of instant gratification. And if you live that way, you start to lose pieces of yourself. And I would say this is part of like why people struggle with mental disorders and like talking to their family about things that happened when they were kids and sorting out, not just sweeping stuff under the rug. That was how it was done in the past, but that was definitely not how it was done back in Rome. Things were addressed always. They didn't just, oh, never mind, we're not coming back to that again. We'll pretend like it never happened. I really like Meditations, as you may be aware. The real secret of the book lies in the fact that Marcus is writing these meditations to himself and to himself alone. He is writing to himself. He is expressing to himself what he is trying and inwardly questioning through his own awakened attention in the present moment. Few of us, of course, can have any idea what his inner state must be like as he reflects and writes. And then I wrote a little note here with the downfall of Rome. And Jesus had just been killed 180 years before. And that whole thing disrupted the Middle East. And Rome had a very big nihilism problem, kind of like the United States and the world, I would say, does now, where they have it so good that they don't see life for the goodness that it is. They only see it for the badness. Badness isn't a word, but the horrors of the world. Charging his vision of the universe and God and the conduct of life with such a contagious, compassionate objectivity towards himself and the forces of life, the pages of this book are in fact a testament to the transforming effect that the awakening of conscious attention has upon the workings of the human mind and heart. And everybody struggles with things in life. And sometimes people become slaves to their struggle, and they become enabling of the struggle. And instead of taking care of that, they deceive themselves. I believe we can detect something in this book that is quite rare in philosophical writing. Marcus is often intensely and carefully watching his own thoughts and impulses with a sincerity and power of attention that is much more difficult to attain than we may imagine. Marcus is seeking to experience from within himself the higher tension of what he calls the logos, or universal reason. And this is, the logos is, you'll see in more spiritual discussions, logos is going to be kind of like that's your conscious, that's your being, that's your, who's perceiving the world, who's the perceptor of, insert your name here. And what are you perceiving, and how are your actions having an impact on the world around you and the people around you? And are there small things you can do to change trajectories of something, having an open conversation with people and being willing to talk about hard things? Goes on to say, and here's the great power of these writings, is that this is the source of true self-respect in human life. No matter how shaken we are, or bored or torn by impossible demands and choices, no matter what is happening to us in life, we happen to be living. It is always possible for us to step back within ourselves and rediscover an intentional relationship to our own mind. No one and nothing can take that possibility from us. I'm a human being. I'm not, first and foremost, a man or a woman, not an animal, not a computer, not a car, not a bank account, not a professor, senator, soldier, not even a mother or father. I'm first and foremost a human being, and it is of the essence of a human being that he has the possibility to cultivate the capacity to step back from himself and become conscious of himself. Throughout the meditations, while Marcus is communicating his struggle not to attach himself to his emotional judgments and thought associations, he speaks of fundamental wish to open himself to the mind of the whole, knowing of the other, of the perceptual person behind the body. A self within himself that has the capacity to obey and transmit the mind of the whole into the bones and muscles of his own human body. For it is through such contract with the principle of mind within oneself that an individual is given the true capacity to live fully and vibrantly the life he has been given by God. That spiritual entity before God gives humans their body in chapter 2 of Genesis. The front row tickets to see the entire world be created. And to act justly towards one's fellow man. It's a ruling idea, kind of logos inside your own life. That everything that happens to you is a choice of your own mental state. This is very common with pick up your cross in the Bible. And it's interesting how close to Jesus' time Marcus is alive. This is 180 years after Jesus was killed. So, very fresh. A lot of that knowledge and way of processing information is lost
in the world right now.
And that's why I think you're seeing Stoicism kind of have this spike back into it. But I look forward to reading the rest of this now. This next part is going to be the historical introduction. Make sure if you guys like this that you like the video. Go ahead and check out my Genesis chapter 1. It's like a 55-minute little shindig. If you want to check that out, it's in the top right. And I will catch you guys in the next video.